Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today is Sunday, 20 April. This is going to be a bit of a weekend special as I've got a bit of time while traveling. So today we're going to be covering today we're going to be covering New Zealand's spy agency has investigated a journalist's work. Putin has declared an Easter truce in Ukraine. And the US has seen widespread anti-Trump protests. So firstly, New Zealand spy agency, the NZSIS, has investigated a journalist named Mick Hall in 2023 over suspicions that his edits to international news stories at Radio New Zealand may have constituted foreign interference. The Inspector General of Intelligence and Security has now concluded that the NZSIS acted lawfully, proportionally, and within its mandate to assess possible threats. The agency ultimately found no evidence that Hall was involved in any state-sponsored interference. The Inspector General emphasised that the importance of balancing national security with freedom of the press and noted that the NZSIS had appropriately informed relevant parties that Hall posed no security threat. Hall, who resigned from Radio New Zealand during the fallout, welcomed the report and said it reaffirmed that the accusations against him were baseless. An independent review commissioned by Radio New Zealand found that Hall had breached editorial standards by inserting a pro-Russian slant into stories, though it concluded that he believed he was acting to improve the balance and accuracy, not to spread propaganda. The review identified systemic issues at Radio New Zealand that enabled such lapses and criticised the leadership's public overreaction, which contributed to the widespread alarm and damage to Hall's reputation. So what? It's encouraging to see the NZSIS has been allowed to fulfil its role, and these findings may boost the organisation's confidence in fulfilling its mission to keep Kiwis safe. However, it would be interesting to see them tackle a similar case focused on Chinese interference and see how the Inspector General handles that. While this is a positive development for New Zealand intelligence, it is likely to be a challenging task to gain the general public's trust, as many people often sceptically view their role. Nevertheless, it is essential for the NZSIS to continue their efforts within the country. And next, Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared an Easter truce in Ukraine, the Kremlin press service said Saturday, over 3 years after Moscow launched its full-scale offensive into Ukraine. The unilateral break in fighting is scheduled to last from Saturday evening until Sunday midnight, local time. During a meeting at the Kremlin, the commander-in-chief said that all fighting would stop from 1800 on the 19th until 0000 on the 21st. They also published this to their Telegram channel. However, Putin said that Russia should be ready for Ukrainian truce violations. According to the statement on Telegram, Putin said the truce would show how sincere Kiev was in his willingness to participate in the process of peace talks aimed at eliminating the root causes of the Ukrainian crisis, so they say. However, the Ukrainian foreign minister said Putin's words cannot be trusted and added that Kiev stands by the earlier deal of a 30-day truce that was pitched by the US last month. The Russian Ministry of Defense said it had instructed all group commanders in Ukraine on the ceasefire, and it said this in a statement that Moscow's troops would adhere to the truce, and it should be mutually respected by Ukraine. So what? So I think many things about this. Firstly, they can't be trusted. There's already been reports of violations across the front and fighting continuing on several axes. Additionally, I also think this is a way of Putin delaying the US's wrath and fury around not participating in the peace talks and trying to frame it as Ukraine, who is not the willing participant, though this could be tough. One of the big things I think they might try and do is frame Ukraine frame Ukraine as the aggressor in this, saying that they violated the truce agreement and therefore they cannot trust any peace talks with Ukraine, and try and get Trump to side with them so that they can essentially make Ukraine and Zelensky look like the bad guys and give the US the ammunition it needs to just abandon Ukraine altogether. And lastly, thousands of demonstrators have rallied at hundreds of events across the United States on Saturday, protesting against President Donald Trump's hardline policies. They denounced Trump's aggressive immigration policies, budget cuts, and pressuring of universities, news media, and law firms, and his handling of the conflicts in both Ukraine and Gaza. Saturday's demonstrations came 2 weeks after the hands-off rallies, though the turnout appeared to be smaller. Since returning to office, both Trump and the billionaire Elon Musk have overseen sweeping government spending cuts, laid off over 200,000 federal employees, and moved to dismantle key federal agencies such as USAID and the Department of Education. The group 5051, a number representing 50 protests in 50 states in one movement, organised the rallies, calling it a decentralised rapid response to the anti-democratic and illegal action by Donald Trump's administration. Protesters voiced support for migrants targeted by Trump's deportation policies, showing solidarity with federal employees who have lost their jobs and universities they're threatened by funding cuts. New Yorkers marched with slogans like "No Kings in America" and "Resist Tyranny." In the capital, Washington, D.C., people expressed concern that Trump was threatening democracy and ideals held by the country. Some of them marched with Palestine slogans and scarves, with a few carrying Ukrainian flags to show solidarity with President Volodymyr Zelensky. So what? There's always going to be people that are critical of any government. We see this across Europe, around the world, anywhere where protest is allowed. Basically, you're always going to have people that are critical of the government. And while I do think some of Trump's actions and moves are pretty extreme, and some even borderline anti-democratic, I don't think that these protests will have a large effect on the majority of his base. Though there has been widespread discontent against, Though there has been growing discontent against his leadership, especially with people who swung vote in to support him, as they are seeing a lot of his decisions as not what they voted for, which will play a significant role in the upcoming midterms in the next 18 months. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope to see you again soon on Monday. See you. We don't normally